Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. I'm Robert Parsons. Our guest today is Shaikha Binjasim, a Kuwaiti academic and human rights activist who teaches philosophy at the University of Kuwait. 2 years ago, she was charged with blasphemy because of her argument that the Constitution should take precedence over the Quran and Islamic law in governing the country. The confusion of politics and religion, she says, lies at the heart of many of the problems across the Middle East. Professor Shaikha Binjasim, welcome to the interview. If I could just start by talking about that issue, the question of the precedence of law over the Quran and the Sharia. Very brave of you, given the context, to make that argument.
Yeah, actually, the fact is, we go by constitution and by law in Kuwait, and that's how we are living.
Yeah.
And just stating it was just outrageous to them. I mean, this is the fact. Our society is a civil society, and we have the constitution, and the Sharia is just one of the sources of the constitution. So I just said what is really what we're living. I mean, this is
what should be the case.
I mean, this is the case, not
Yeah.
the should be. I mean, this is the case that we are living on. Just the constitution is the supreme law, and then we have all the other laws that are coming from the constitution.
So were you surprised when this issue was raised against you?
Yes, very. Because I thought what I've said is just the normal
obvious,
thing,
yeah.
the obvious,
Yeah. But the charges were dropped, right?
Yes. So actually, I wasn't really charged. Two people just filed complaints against me, saying that I ridiculed Islam and I need to be charged with blasphemy. But then it took the prosecutor 2 months to dismiss the charges. I mean, the case. It wasn't even. It didn't go to the court, so it was dismissed.
But what about in society at the time? Was there a big debate about the case, about whether you were right or whether you were wrong or not?
Oh yes, a lot, and that's really the bad thing. I mean, it's the society. It's not the government. It's not the prosecutor. I was charged by the society. The prosecutor actually said, no, what she said is true. She was defending the Constitution. But all this attack, it was coming to me from the society.
So what in effect is happening in Kuwait is that the law, the Constitution, is way out in advance of society. And the law, in effect, is in a clash with society, with custom.
Yeah, I think, the people... the people in Kuwait, they know democracy, but all they know about democracy is just voting. But there are democratic values that people lack. For instance, I think two of the parliament members who were at that time parliament members, they asked the Minister of Education to expel me from Kuwait University because of what I've said.
Yeah.
Imagine, they are parliament members who use the constitution and the law to get to the parliament, but they know nothing about democracy.
Yeah.
They know only people have to give them their votes, and that's the irony here.
So, by the standards of the region, Kuwait sounds pretty liberal.
Yes, and we are way what do we say, developed. Developed.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to,
Is it an example, would you say, for the region? Would you say it's an example?
It's a good example.
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's a good example, yeah.
Just don't question the emir. That's the golden rule, yeah?
Oh, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are some areas that are just simply out of bounds.
Yeah, actually these days we have many people, not many, I mean, let's say several people, and it's increasing. People charged for if they talk about the emir, or if they criticize him, or criticize any of the presidents of the GCC countries, or the sister countries, we call them, or friends, like Egypt or Emirates or Saudi Arabia, all these countries. We cannot do that. And people also sometimes get charged because of talking about religion, Shia against Sunnah or Sunnah against Shia. So it's not really as greeny as it was before. Actually, it's getting really gloomy now because of these charges. And there are people either some of them already in prison or others are outside of Kuwait, in London or other cities around the world, just because they were charged like for 7 years or 5 years in prison.
I just want to get back to this point about the clash between law and custom. I was watching a debate in which you were involved, in which a man was making that point that, for instance, on the issue of guardianship, so quite often you have women who live by themselves, but for society, that is completely unacceptable.
Yes.
So that you have this clash, and I wondered, is there a danger perhaps sometimes that when you're defending human rights, you're defending the law and the constitution, that you can get too far out ahead of society and provoke, in effect, a backlash?
Yeah, I think that's what's happening actually. So I always put this example for like my students or whoever I'm talking about, when you say, okay, the Kuwait government would provide scholarship for anyone who wants to study abroad, whether it's a boy or a girl, like 18 years and above. And then when you see all the numbers, you will check that men would apply for this scholarship, not because the government is not allowing them, it's just because the family and the society, and that's the issue here. So we have these culture, the cultural issues is our cultural customs is controlling us more than the law.
So how do you combat that?
Well, I guess by being on air or being with you and talking and tweeting and just, saying things out loud and, people would follow.
Do you get a lot of support from within Kuwaiti society?
Yes, a lot.
From men as well as women?
Yes, I do. Yes, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I guess people who don't like change, they are the people who's attacking me, The people who would like things to be the way they are, they are afraid of change. So that's why they attack anyone who's trying to change.
What about the wider region? I noted that when your case came up, that many of the harshest attacks of your position came not from within Kuwait, but from, for instance, Saudi Arabia. Yet Saudi Arabia too is showing signs of change.
Yeah, but this is unfathomable to me. Few days ago, someone, I forgot his name, he's from Saudi Arabia, he was calling for the adhan, the calling for prayers to be shut down, and he doesn't want to. And then the society of Saudi Arabia just attacked him, and he was, in shock, because I think there are no red lines now clear for the Saudi Arabians. They don't know where to stop, because few months ago, Yani was there, the artist, the singer, the composer. And he was in a concert and with men and women together without any segregation. And then so when this Saudi Arabian was talking about, the adhan and we should just put it off and things like that, the society didn't accept him. So I guess the Saudi Arabians now are just baffled. They don't know where to put these red lines, because
it's not clear now.
Yeah, huge changes are coming.
But are you encouraged? Do you think there's a sign of hope at last in Saudi Arabia? Was it too early to say?
I think they are going to change definitely, because they cannot go back now. But it's actually very sudden, and I don't know how their society is going to understand this and how to just absorb all these changes so quickly.
But looking beyond Saudi Arabia, was the period with the Arab Spring and so on. There was so much optimism in the Middle East. That sort of wellspring of hope has dried up. We see sectarianism everywhere in the Middle East at the moment, but particularly in Syria and Iraq. We're seeing what's happening at the moment in eastern Ghouta, just outside Damascus, and throughout Syria. Is it possible, given all that's happening at the moment in the Middle East, to remain an optimist on the issue of human rights?
Well, I'm hopeful, and I think after these wars and clashes, after the end, maybe all these issues of human rights will be looked at in a different angle, in a different way, because now the whole world is watching. and everything happened like in Ghouta and anywhere in Afrin, anywhere, and people, the whole world is watching us, and so then this all the human rights issues will be like a big issue after the wars, and it is now a big issue.
How much of a threat to what you're trying to achieve is the problem of sectarianism, Shia and Sunni, in the Arab world?
So let's talk about Kuwait first, about Shia and Sunni. I mean, we have that. So in the past few years, when a Shi'i, like a young man, Shi'i, wrote a tweet about one of the Prophet's wives, he was charged with in prison. He was put in prison for 10 years, and he's still in prison, you know, just because of tweet. He wrote a tweet. And then after that, a lot of the Sunni also were put in prison for, like, I mean, the Shia, they're opposites. Sometimes Shia, sometimes Sunni. Some of them for criticizing Saudi Arabia, and some for like blasphemy charges, or like talking bad things about the Prophet's wife or something like that. So I think now Shia and Sunni, all of them, they tasted what it's like to be in prison, and you know it's not really good to shut up when other people are in jail because they're not your tribe. So I think,
And on that point, I'm afraid we're going to have to end it. We've run completely out of time. But thanks very much to our guest, Professor Shaikha Al-Jassem. But don't go away. More news and headlines to follow soon.
I'm Jessica Lemazurier. I am France 24's New York and United Nations correspondent. You can find my live coverage and reports on France 24's news programmes and on France24.com.
Jessica Lemazurier, one of the 160 France 24 correspondents around the world.